I think there's this idea that if you're into Fibonacci potencies or inspiring homeopathy or all this other stuff, that it's woo-woo and you're not really grounded in homeopathy, or you're not a homeopath, or you're not a classical homeopath. And for me, all those things are linked. So it is my sense and belief that classical homeopathy, Hahnemann's homeopathy, is at the base of everything, right? That is the organization system. That is the grounded base that everything else comes off of, right? And so in order for this other stuff to be grounded, to make sense, to be linked in with homeopathy itself and the essence of homeopathy, it has to have that base. Hahnemann says you have to...
Hi, homies. Today is part 2 of my conversation with Kim Kalina. Do go and check out yesterday's episode if you haven't yet, because this one carries on from that. And if you want to get hold of Kim, visit the Irish School of Homeopathy's website. That's ish.ie. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout Podcast, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now our mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
I have often said, and I hope that this is something that we get to the place of doing, but I wish the homeopathic pharmacies would label the remedies, say, whatever, lacmaternum 30C-C5 or C8, so that you know what level that has been triturated up to. And in the email that you send, I hope we can talk about that next, about do we really need more remedies? And I'm saying that as I'm still sitting with this bird feather here that we were supposed to triturate this week, but then there was actually this series of events that happened that meant that we didn't do it. And so we're looking for a new date now. So still sitting with this here. Yeah, it's interesting. And so we're like taking that all into account. And then there's this email of yours of, do we really need more remedies? And I've been sitting with exactly that, because I went on a beautiful journey with this flower that I triturated last year, the fringed violet. And that was like really deeply profound. And I was wondering, is it more that we need to do that as a journey for ourselves, rather than it necessarily needs to be a remedy that goes out there that needs to be added to the Materia Medica? And at the same time with CHE Australia, there is Andres Sain does the Materia Medica Pura project, where instead of making new remedies, they're using existing remedies, doing new provings on them and just working at a deeper level. And so he's asked our school to be part of the proving of a known remedy, which I won't say because the students haven't been told yet. And I'm like, that's actually a great idea, just getting like new provings. But I feel those remedies need to be almost triturated again, or maybe triturated to a deeper level. And like you said, I think our existing remedies just maybe need to be taken to a deeper level. Like Andreas Tilch with his Streptolch C5, that has had such a profound impact on people. And what if we just did that with all our existing remedies, arnica, whatever, and we just, because they most likely at a C3, which is what we get from the pharmacies. If they were even triturated, maybe they weren't even triturated. They might have just been.
Yeah, that's the thing. Unless a remedy, I had a chat with John Morgan about this a long time ago. And basically, unless something is insoluble, it hasn't been triturated, right? So it's things like metals or anything that is insoluble in water is triturated. And then that's triturated 3 rounds. And that's going to be triturated till it breaks down. But LM remedies, all LMs are triturated because they're all triturated 3 rounds, right? That's one of the significant differences, I think, with LMs, is that every one of those has had 3 rounds of trituration. But Annika and Judy and their group, they had done calendula, right? And it's not like the remedy that we read isn't the remedy we know, but we know it much more deeply. We can see many more ways of using it beyond what we do, right? And I think there's so many remedies, there's a lot of remedies we use that we think of as either acute or chronic, right? We think of them in certain ways. Like for me, Rustox is one of those. Like Rustox for me is an incredibly deep, it's a pivotal remedy in my practice.
Inspiring homeopathy was what showed me, because I had only ever thought of Rustox as an acute remedy, and inspiring homeopathy showed me what an incredible constitutional, deep-acting remedy.
Exactly. And so there's remedies like that we think of as an acute, but actually they have these amazing properties that we just haven't explored fully. I mean, one of the things I noticed with people with Parkinson's is that they often have an arnica layer that's way beyond the acute. It's a deep constitutional layer in them very often. And they have repeated traumas from early in life. And it seems to be a really common one in that group, that particular disease for some reason. But Yeah, for me, I've thought a lot, and let me be clear, I don't have an answer, right? Like I'm one of those people that, I think I was telling you before we got on, like I have this capacity. I was born on the cusp of Taurus and Gemini. So like, I tend to think like big about, I'll allow myself to just open up and see what wants to come in. And I can allow streams of consciousness to just come through. Like I'll ask a question and be curious about things. See, why is that? Like, why do we have so many remedies now? Like, why is that? What's the need for that? What's that about? And I just allow things to come through. What it's about. And it then has to ground with the Taurian side of me. It has to actually make sense. I don't feel like any of that stuff is grounded yet. I don't feel like I've got to like something that I feel like is the answer. Maybe it's because there isn't the answer, maybe lots of reasons. But I have thought a lot about, is part of that our cancer miasm as a profession? Are we stuck in this extreme overgrowth phase and it's all chaotic and we've got all these remedies? I mean, Hahnemann had about 90 remedies used. Kent had about 650. I mean, even by 1970, there were only about 1,000 remedies. But somehow from 200 years ago to 1970, about 1,000 remedies were made. And then suddenly from 1970 to now, in 50 years, we've got more than 4,000 remedies and accelerating new remedies all the time. And I just think, nobody's ever going to use all those remedies. Like, I think, okay, what's that about? Is that part of our own miasmatic thing we're stuck in, right? And we're trying to prove ourselves. And in doing that, we're creating more and more new remedies and more new things and doing more and more research. Not that any of that's bad. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad. But is it that? Is it a reflection of what's happening in the Western medical world, right? And what's happening in the world as a whole? We see people sort of with gender identity issues, period. Everybody has to be an individual. They're all about my uniqueness, what I need, me. And are we creating more and more unique remedies? Are we mirroring that? Are we contributing to that by because it's an energy medicine? Are we throwing more and more unique energy out there and sort of feeding that uniqueness thing? Or are these substances that want to come in because they have a purpose for us now? And part of me wonders if it's just Hahnemann's thing. Hahnemann talked about knowing your medicines. And it's what you were saying. Are we called to create a remedy for something, like for me, about this idea of I'm safe? But that doesn't mean that's necessarily meant to go out to the larger homeopathic world or to a pharmacy or anything else. It's a remedy for me to use in my practice. That's what I want. So I've played a lot the last year, I would say, with individual versus collective. It's one of the things I think Tinas was a real gift in his Inspiring Homeopathy, the way he looked at this idea of there are accidental layers, there are individual layers that are the constitutional remedy, but then there are also these universal layers that are common to all of us as human beings. It's more the collective, right? For me, there's a layer in between there of the ancestral, which does encompass miasm, but a lot more than that. Our ancestors have loads of gifts for us, but those gifts tend to be blocked by the stuff that's built up in our ancestral lines. And for me, the ancestral is sort of the moving out of the individual into our ancestral, which is a much larger group. And then eventually you then move into the universal. So I see a lot of people coming in with ancestral issues these days. I mean, look at the rise of things like family constellations and IFS, and people are much more aware that their ancestry and their family is playing into current health issues.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, because of the work I've been doing for many years, I'm a lot more curious about why the world is where it is now. Why are we bringing in all these remedies now? Why is all the stuff that's going? Why do we need all these new methodologies, all this new stuff? What is it that the collective is needed? The bigger overarching collective is needing from us that all of this is about? And how can we meet that in a better way? Can we actually focus on healing the collective and not just the individual? And for me, I think that's where trituration comes into that.
So I just have to say that in 440 episodes, I've loved all of them, but there's two things that I selfishly love the most. And that is when we can have open and honest and frank conversations about our profession. And that's the projector in me where I'm like, is what we're doing, is this the best we can do? Is there a better way that we can do things? And just because we've always done this, is this the way we should always be doing it? I freaking love having conversations about our profession. And How are we doing things and can we do it better? And then the other thing is when I get to interview, I always use her as an example. And Barbara doesn't even know this, but Barbara Braun was probably, I always say this is my favoriteest episode. She's friends with, have you heard of her?
I've heard of her, yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't have that book. That looks amazing.
I actually bought 10 copies of this a couple of years ago and gave it away as Christmas gifts to everyone. But for her to be working with the local Sangormas, the shaman, to teach them how to use their endangered plants that they've been using as medicines to turn that into homeopathic remedies. But then vice versa, them then tuning into the plants and telling her how we can use that in homeopathy. Like that's the stuff with this podcast that lights me up the most, is that people that are doing the work out there in the wop-wops without any glory or recognition, just doing the work and having this conversation that you are having right now, like questioning what it is that we're doing and is there a better way, and not necessarily having an answer, but just asking the questions. And if I hope we can always do that as a profession and always hold ourselves accountable and always ask, is there a better way that we can do things? Because if we ever stop having those conversations, then we're in trouble. But I'm so glad you said that. I would love if you could say a little bit more about the ancestral stuff, because it really, and especially with Colin Griffith's work, where he talks a lot about the ancestral stuff. And since he was on the podcast, everyone's just, Eugenia, I want to clear my ancestral trauma. It's like a buzzword. And I actually had a revelation last year, June. My children go to a Steiner school and they do the spiral walk on the winter solstice. And, it's very solemn and quiet. And there's just this candlelight and it's in this beautiful spiral and you're walking it. And as I was driving back from that, I thought to myself, we go on about like clear ancestral trauma, but actually, if you can sit in that shit of the ancestral trauma and learn the lesson from that, then it's your gift to keep forever. Then it's not a trauma. You've learned from it. It's a gift. Then it's not something that needs to be fought against or cleared. So rather than clearing it or fighting it, you're learning the lesson that's from it and you're internalizing it as a gift that you, like the knowledge that you now have.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm glad you think so too.
Yeah, totally. Because I've never liked that idea of clearing something out. Sometimes you do. Sometimes I've got like a write and burn exercise I'll do with patients sometimes if there's something that's particularly problematic, that there's like a stuck place, like it's an obstacle to cure and they can't move past. And we'll do something with remedies and a write and burn. But most of the time, it's just about integration. It's exactly what you're saying. It's being conscious of it. Because a lot of times what our ancestors want is for us to just be conscious of what they've been through for us, be conscious of the fact that they're there and wanting to support us, right? It's just being willing to acknowledge that part of us. It's like Indigenous cultures, this is just the norm. Like I was really lucky. I got to go to New Zealand about, I can't remember what it was, 10, 12 years ago. And I'm so grateful to those girls. I went to teach CEAS. And for me, that's the gift of CEAS, is it took me places and meeting people that I never would have met any other way. And the girls were so gorgeous. In fact, they gave me this beautiful pendant, this Maori pendant, because about half the class were Maori, which I didn't know.
Beautiful.
And
our paths must have almost crossed, because I left New Zealand 10 years ago. So I went.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, there you go. We probably almost did. But they were gorgeous, and they shared with me some of their culture, and we had long conversations, and I had such respect for what they're doing in that culture. But one of the things that was interesting that some of them were telling me, for me, it was very similar to some of the Native American teachings, because I studied with some Native American women when I was younger. And those cultures don't view disease or illness as an individual thing. They view it as collective. If somebody in their community becomes very ill, they see that person as holding something for the group. And so the community comes together as a collective to help to heal it. It's not about that individual needing to be fixed. It's about the collective. So I guess that's why for me, I always tend to have this capacity to step back and say, hang on, okay, we're doing all this stuff. Let's step back for a minute. What's this about? What's going on? What's going on our planet right now? How can we contribute to it evolving? Our whole planet is in a massive transition right now, the biggest of our lifetimes. And I just feel like we as homeopaths should be able to contribute to that. So part of what I see when I look at that is that all the wars happening, there's so much war stuff. And notice it's all happening on soil that war has happened a lot, right? It's in the land, it's in the ancestral places of those places, right? So ancestral healing for me isn't just about the individual. Ancestral healing can also be something that's happening in the landscape, in a water, in different places. Because the ancestors, like the Aboriginals, you know this, have their song lines, right? It's some of the South American tribes have song lines, and they weave the song lines. And a lot of that is connected to ancestral things. It's the knowledge of the ancestors. So the land holds so much connection to the ancestral. And for me, I think ancestral healing is part of what has to happen right now in the collective and on the planet for us to evolve and move forward, to let go of the need to have constant wars and battle each other, right? But also a new energy needs to be put in, something more healing. So I've worked with ancestral a lot. And again, it was the autism kids that taught me about ancestral healing. I had this one particularly difficult case that had done so well with so many different things and had done detox without much change, really, had done really well with different remedies, mostly the inspiring remedies. But we just hit this spot. They still weren't talking. They were twins and they weren't talking. But there wasn't anything else wrong. It was just like they just didn't seem to be able to talk. They were there. They knew what was happening. And I talked to their mum, and one half of the family line was from areas of world wars in France and Germany and back there. And I said to her, like, is there anything in your ancestral line? I don't know why I asked the question. It just came to me because I couldn't come up with anything else. Is there any stories, anything that would explain not being able to talk or not being willing to talk? And she literally burst into tears it was a Zoom call. And I said, what is that? What's going on? And she told me a story of I think it was her grandfather. It was a long time ago now. Grandfather or great-grandfather. They'd lived in a small village in the south of France. And the Nazis came into the village and were trying to root out the conscientious objectors and the rebels that were fighting against them. And were using a lot of threats and things. And basically the villagers decided that they needed to give somebody up as helping the rebels so that the rest of them were safe. And they offered up her grandfather. And the Nazis, as an example, took him out into the middle of the town, pulled out his tongue and cut it off in front of the whole village. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, I had shivers in my whole body, and I knew. And she said, I have terrible social anxiety and my kids can't speak. And I thought, Rustox. So I gave her Rustox and thymus gland to work with the kids and heal that old trauma, which it did. And they were able to start talking. So they taught me, like, don't assume something is the drug they got or the vaccine or the this or the pregnancy thing or the whatever. Like, look all the way back. Really ask, why is this going on? And what's behind it? What's underneath it? Why? Why in this child? So for me, I do look for those things. Sometimes it's a trauma like that. Sometimes it's an illness that I have to resolve that an ancestor had. Sometimes it's a really protective ancestor. We've got a gorgeous little girl right now that we're working with that her mum said to us the last time we talked to her, she said, she goes completely out of her mind. She's screaming and shrieking and her eyes are wild. And I look in her eyes and all I can see is an old woman. I can't see my 2-year-old. I said, hang on, old woman, what's your intuitive sense about who that old woman is? Right. And we had some conversations, and another student I was working with and myself did some sort of meditating and intuitive, and we all came to the same conclusion that it was an angry grandma. And we learned that the grandmother in this particular family, quite a ways back, had always had to defer to the men. She couldn't do what she wanted to do. She couldn't gain her freedom. And we all picked up on this thing that this poor little girl, the grandmother was there to make sure that never happened to her, right? So she was functioning in a protective way. And so the only way to resolve that for the little girl to get better was to actually heal the grandmother, right? And we used thymus gland and Rustox again. So it's like these remedies come right back in again. I use that combination a lot when I'm working on healing ancestral issues. There may be other remedies. I've used other remedies too, but that particular combo is a powerful one for me that I've seen work over and over. So yeah, I've used it to heal lands. When I was up in Scotland a few years back, I went up and I could feel really deep war-connected stuff, and Mercury was the remedy that felt very much connected to some of what was going on. It was very syphilitic. And I used that along with thymus glands and rust ox. I used a triad there and I put it into the lab. Do I know it fixed something? I don't know. But I don't care. I do it because if I feel like I need to do it, then I just do it. I just trust that there's something that needs to happen.
I really wanted to ask as well, because you have got the triturated versions of them, if you know where people can obtain them, because we're probably going to be getting a whole pile of emails. So if you can let us know various places.
Actually, I should have said that. When you said like you wished pharmacies would put the trituration number on there is one pharmacy that does, and that's INE Organics in the States.
Oh, okay.
So, don't overwhelm poor Elizabeth, because but Elizabeth has all of my triturated.
Okay. Well, our biggest
listenership homeopathy remedies.
Our biggest listenership is actually in America, so Elizabeth may be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Give her a warning. Luckily,
that's
I can
okay.
get
She's very good. Elizabeth's really good at holding a boundary and saying, "Look, it's going to be a couple of weeks. I'll get
it's a little while before the episode comes out, so I can get my order in first before our listeners hear this.
Yeah. No, it's great. No, she's great. I chose to work with Elizabeth because she is a healer in her own right. She is a homeopath, but she also does a lot of energetic healing work, and she understood how to hold the energetic grid of those remedies that we had created.
I'd love to have her on the podcast.
I'd
love to have her on the podcast, actually, if you wouldn't mind putting us in touch, because
totally,
that'd be very lovely.
Yeah, she'd be amazing.
I would love for us to talk at the collective, like waters or collective, because actually, you're my 5th guest today, my lucky last. And of course, as the universe would have it, I did some ladies from the Canadians for Homeopathy earlier today, and they obtained some water from below the pyramids in Egypt just the last couple of weeks. And they're going to make that into a remedy. And Reita Poyoinen's obviously got the Aquamarina Arctica, and Janie Levereta and Elise Timmerman went and made the remedy from the waters from the Maria Magdalena cave in France. And so there's all these different waters that
we made a Medjugorje. We made one from the sacred waters from Medjugorje, where the Mary apparitions. So we did that in our school years ago. So there's a lot of them.
And so, I mean, in your email, you were saying about, like getting various sacred waters. It'd be so great from like each continent even.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. Sort of, I don't know if it's mad or not mad. It's just something that sometimes things come to me that I think, okay, if we're working at the level of the collective, yes, I know that if we triturate up and we get up, my experience is once we get up into the realm of C6, 8, 12, getting up into that realm, that we start to hit the collective and open up to the collective. And so trituration is part of that. But I also have had this idea that, well, would it make sense to create collective sacred remedies? So like a collective sacred waters remedy that has lots of different sacred waters from different continents, as you say, like that creates a planetary sacred water remedy, because it's coming from all the different continents and they're all coming together. So water isn't separate, is it? Ultimately, all waters connect to all other waters. So I've thought of that. And some of that, I think, has come from Harry Vander's what an amazing guy. And he, years ago, when I was at Teleosis, had sent an email out wanting to do these global provings of clay and silver. And he did a few different ones. And our school participated in that. And I said, yeah, we'll do that. So we were part of that. And he first gave me the idea of, if we do this, he did it as a global proving. But I thought, what if we did a global remedy? Yes, we have these individual ones, but can we start to heal that individuality and bring it back to the whole, that's back to the collective and the group, by bringing all those together into one remedy? I don't know, but I'm curious about it, and I might try it with some groups, But also I think trituration itself can do that. I know one of the things you and I had talked about was that on emails that I've got this idea, and it's definitely something I want to do, that came out of the thymus gland trituration. Paul Thoralt and I have been doing thymus gland as a trituration since last August. I'd felt for a long time I wanted to do it because my husband has Parkinson's. Thymus gland has a lot to do with Parkinson's. It's also really strongly connected to autism. The thymus gland is the seat of our immune system, but it's also the connection point to our soul's records. All the traumas, anything that happens to us affects that thymus gland. And so I use thymus gland a lot in my practice, but it felt like it wanted to be triturated. It wanted to move forward. And so Paul had said, it's on my list too. Let's do it together, because I love Paul. We've we've been
Paul
friends
loves
for
you
many.
too.
Yeah,
Whenever he
we've
talks
been friends for
about,
a long time.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's always
he's
gushing
just
about you.
he's amazing. I'm just so impressed by what he's done,
Well,
with trituration. And it was all out of a silly conversation we had. I can't even remember what the course I was doing. Was out with Annika and Judy, and Paul was there, and we were having this chat at lunch about. He was like, "Wait, you're what are you going to do? You're triturating this up to 8? Like, why did you go to 8?" And I was like, "It's just what the substance wanted to do." So we went there, and we felt like it. I feel like it goes through these other levels of the miasmatic, and then the collective, and then the symbolic. And then I was explaining to him like my sense of it, and he was like, "I'm going to start triturating. I'm going to start triturating all this stuff." He just went off and just went mad with it, which is brilliant because I can't do all that. But he's amazing. He can do it. I don't have the time enough time in a year to
no,
do
he
what he's
doesn't.
done.
No, I figured out that he doesn't sleep. But
No,
after
he
having
doesn't.
the incredible privilege to meet him in person in Bali, he is unlike anybody I have ever met in my entire life. I am convinced he is an elf incarnated.
Oh yeah,
Hey, he
yeah, yeah,
is, yeah, he's
yeah,
just
for
a
sure.
brilliant mind. You know how you meet some people and you're like, this person is just on a different level to like us
Oh
mere
yeah.
mortals.
Oh,
But
totally. Like
he is
when
a
we,
gift. He's a gift to our profession for sure.
that's why I thought it was incredible. When he was like, "How about you and I do this trituration together?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And then I thought, don't know how I'm going to do this. I can't keep up with like where his brain goes. I just can't do that. But it's great because we did it on Zoom. We did it unlike I've ever done with triturations before. We did the first one together, and then we went off and did a bunch of things on our own. And then we came back and did another level together. And then we kept going in and out of doing it together and doing it on our own. And it was fascinating. It was just like I bring in this whole, what I think of as much more feminine, right-brained, grounded, intuitive thing. And then he brings in this vast amount of knowledge that he's getting from everywhere under the sun. And it's just amazing to watch the two come together and create an amazing new whole. And that remedy, I'm not sure where it'll go. I was only supposed to do up to 24 with him. And that's as far as I've ever gone with a trituration, which was quite an amazing experience. And we finished 24, I think sometime before Christmas. I think we did it. Oh no, it was on the solstice. We finished 24 on the solstice. And I said, I'm going to step out of this now, but he's going to carry on. He's going way up. He said he feels like that one's got to go way higher than he's done before. But it was a fascinating one for me because the theme for me that ran through it that I hadn't really understood about thymus gland before from what I'd read, but that just literally thymus gland itself just kept hammering away at me was authenticity. That's what it does. It absolutely makes us come back to ourselves and know exactly who we are and be who we are. And we can't help but be anything other than our authentic selves with that. That's what it's here to teach us. And in that space, I received this you get a lot of stream of consciousness when you're triturating for hours and hours on end. And this whole piece came in about how I had to stop at 24C. That was my end. I needed to end there because there was a new project I needed to do that was needed for the collective. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. I have been feeling that for a while. And what came in was this idea of using trituration as the healing process itself, rather than as a means of creating a remedy that will then heal, right? Yes, it will do that too, but actually using the process of trituration to infuse something out onto the planet.
Yeah.
And what came to me in that space was that I needed to gather together a group of homeopaths and or healers. Doesn't necessarily have to be homeopaths. Some of those people will triturate. Some of them may want to hold space, like Ambika Waters. When I talked to her about this, she was like, "Oh, I love this. I really want to do this." But she said, "I don't triturate. I'm too old for that." And I said, "Yeah, I totally hear you." And she said, "But I'd really like to be able to hold the space if you feel like that would be appropriate." And I said, yeah, that would be amazing, right? So this idea of getting people from all over the planet in all different locations that can all hold the space. And the thing that wants the space held is pure love. And I said, is that unconditional love? And it was, no, it's pure love. It's very clearly pure love. That's what it wants to be. And that is what the planet needs at this time. That's what the collective needs. It's what the planet herself needs. And putting together a group to do this. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to go about that. I'm not even sure. It all comes in as it's meant to. But yeah, I mean, that for me is a way of healing the collective that's come to me that I'm going to try and put into place. And I'm sure other people are going to have lots of other ways of doing it. How many of us over the years have put remedies into the water and stuck it onto the earth and everything else? We've all been doing that. But it feels like what's required now for the transformation that's happening on the planet. and in order for the individuals to be able to heal and transform, is to actually also address the collective level that's out of balance right now, that's seeking to shift. And I think as homeopaths, we're uniquely situated to do that, right? It's very similar for me to what meditators do. You know, a lot of the TM movements do group planetary meditations. When I meditated on this particular thing, what was interesting was that what came from that was, what we're doing is a passive sitting, active from passivity meditation. But what's needed now with this transformation happening is there has to be something to move the energy in a more direct way. And I thought, well, that's what trituration does. Like we're sitting there grinding and scraping and grinding and scraping and grinding. It's this bold, one of the girls when I was doing the IH remedies said, it takes me back to being with my grandmother and making cookies and like sitting with a big bowl with a wooden spoon and doing that thing. And she said, when my grandmother did that, I always had the feeling that she was infusing us all with love. Like she was literally that's what that process was doing. And I feel like that's what we're doing. And I thought, yeah, it is. That's what trituration can do. So why don't we just do it? Why don't we use it for that instead of needing to make a remedy? Yeah.
It's just so cool hearing you say that, because that is literally the conclusion I came to when I made that fringe violet last year, because the journey that it took me on was so profound. And I was like, I actually prescribed it for a couple of my clients and they did okay on it. But I was like, maybe this isn't a remedy that I need to tell everyone about. Maybe it's actually just, that was my little journey that I had to go on, because this is something I have said it on the podcast before, but because I'm from South Africa, but I'm actually a New Zealand citizen, but I live in Australia. I'm about to go for my Australian citizenship test. I'm very excited. I hope they'll pass me and that I'll get my Aussie citizenship. But this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life now, because my children are settled here, their grandparents here, aunties, uncles. This is where my life's going to be. But I grew up with different plants in a different country, in a different language, and different culture. And it's really hard, actually. You would know this. It's how I'm so appreciative of this land, this people. There's also there's little something, because this isn't where you grew up. This isn't your culture. But trituration has bound me to this land, because actually we were going to triturate emu, because when I found out the feather has got 2 spines, I was like, what? And then Paul said to me, emu's already been done. You need to do cassowary. So we did cassowary. There were so many accidents. So I actually was hoping to have a chat with you about how you protect yourself, because we had lots of accidents during that proving, which brought up a lot of things for me. But then we also did the WA Christmas tree, and we did a couple of other things as well. But then I did this French violet, I was just so drawn to this plant because we just moved to this area. There's these beautiful French violets on this new land we got. And I found there's 47 varieties, and it was like they would talk. I was obsessed. Everyone around me was like, Eugenia's lost her mind. And so I had to triturate this plant, and I'm going to change my logo to be this, like, it's just like, now I'm like, I feel like I've connected with the soul of this plant on this land, and that in a way has connected me to this land. And so trituration as a means of grounding you in a new country, I think, is actually really powerful and something that's not talked about enough. Because when we drove down south last year, all the newtsies, the Christmas trees were blooming, and I saw the plant, and instead of the trees, and instead of just like, oh yeah, whatever, I'm like, oh, it's like we have that soul connection now. When I see the plant, it's not just a tree anymore. It's like we've danced together. It's different. And so I think it's a powerful way of connecting you to the land if you're not natively from there. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think that's because I guess one thing I want to make sure I'm clear about is, like, I'm not saying trituration is better than potentization. I think both are a necessary thing. They're both part of homeopathy. They both have their value. For me, trituration is what you're saying. It's much more grounding. It's very earthing. One's water, one's physical substance, right? So it depends on what you're wanting to put into that, right? And I think trituration can be much more grounding. But as you say, you can go much more deep into something as well. I do think always there's conscious choice. I think there always has to be. Like one of the things that's always made me incredibly sad within homeopathy is, in my lifetime, in the 30 years that I've been in homeopathy, people have become really afraid of doing provings. This fear about provings, and I'm not quite sure where it came from.
I've started developing that after the cassowary trituration. I won't lie. And that's why I'm like obsessively asking everyone else. I asked Annika, and you said you listened to that episode, how do we protect ourselves? Because I do think it's a cosmic, like a soul contract that you kind of make with that substance. Okay.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think, look, I've had some pretty pretty awful provings. In the school one year, one of the students in the class said, "Oh, I'd love to prove a flower essence. Could we prove one of the flower essences?" And we thought, yeah, okay. The way we always did provings was we wrote names down, we threw them all in a hat, and then as teachers, somebody would pick one out. So one person knew what it was, nobody else did. And so the name that came out of the hat was Bat Rescue Remedy. I can honestly say that was the worst proving I've ever been part of. And yet the most amazing proving at the same time. But the amount of people who had blown tires, accidents, why we decided to pick like this trauma. It was like, that's what it's all about. But the beauty of it was like in homeopathic form, it was incredibly powerful for adrenal stuff. Any adrenal issue, just dissolve. I still use it for that. It's just amazing as an adrenal remedy. But God, it was a nightmare as a thing to prove for a month. Because me and somebody else, we were receiving the stuff from the supervisors. And after the first week, I was like, I contacted her and I said, "Are you saying anything that's..." She said, "Oh my God, 3 people have had their tires blow out." I was like, "Yeah, I've had 4 have their tires blow out." And she was like, "Do you think we need to do something?" So actually both of us sat and for a moment, and I said, we need to be clear about protection with this. This one requires more protection. For me, I just called in an angel and I said, "Angel of this proving, I want you to watch over it. And it's fine to give us experiences that we learn from, but I want you to make sure no one gets harmed. I want you to make sure we're protected, and there's no serious harm comes to anyone." And everything settled down after that. But one of the really intriguing things about that proving is when we got to the end of it, the people that had the worst experiences by far were people that take Bat Rescue Remedy every day, like all the time. And they suddenly had a very different experience and a newfound appreciation of, oh, maybe I shouldn't just take this all the time. It's not just some benign substance. It taught us. So it's not like I haven't had some quite intense experiences. And in fact, with inspiring homeopathy, like a lot of people have said to me, "Why isn't cuprum a C8?"
Yeah.
And I said, because I definitely got a very strong, do not bring this up to the collective. It does not belong there. You will unleash something that you do not understand and you cannot control. So no way. And I was getting images of Nazi Germany and Hitler with that. And somebody else had some dreams, same sort of thing. And I said, look, if any of you want to go, you want to go do it, that's up to you. But I said, it's not going to get done within this context of what we're doing. It's not it. Of all of them, it's not meant to move forward. Interestingly, Carscum cuprum was fine to bring up to a C8, but not cuprum on its own. So I respected that. If I get a strong feeling like that, I listen. And I think that's part of it. So one of the things I've learned over the years is that the people that had the most fear about doing a proving generally do have not very nice experiences with it. And I think what the fear is about is they're picking up on their own inner sense that their inner makeup is not solid enough and strong enough to not be pulled off center by the proving substance. That they can feel that they are picking up on their sensitivity and their energy system not being stable enough to have something else come into it without throwing everything haywire. Okay. And so I absolutely think people need to respect that when they feel that. But what I've also in more recent years done is said, explore what that's about, because it's not just about being afraid of approving. The fear is coming from a place of something's not stable enough within me. So make sure you look at that so that you work on that for yourself, because something's not fully solid yet. Yeah. And that's been helpful. I think that's been helpful. But I also go into approving being very clear about boundaries, about stepping into it and out of it. I do it with everything. My students in Ireland all know. They're always, sometimes I think they think, Kim is insane. But when I go into the space, I always say, we're going to open our learning bubble now, right? We have a little meditation in the class. We're going to open our learning bubble. We're going to release anything from the outside world. We are stepping into this learning bubble that's just about what we're going to learn for and with each other. And when we're done with our day, we're going to step back out of our learning bubble and go back to our lives and back to our worlds. And those two things don't mix. That learning bubble is always there for you. You can step back into it anytime you need to reconnect, but everything outside stays outside. I do a very similar thing with provings if I'm doing a proving. Triturations, I often will call in. I always, when I go into a trituration, I sit in meditation for a while. I always light a white candle. I have a big singing bowl that comes from an ancient, big old monastery up in Tibet that my former husband had gotten for me. And I always hit that bowl and I ask for whatever beings are meant to be part of this process, either in a protective role or a supportive role in some way, to please be present. And I find whoever's meant to be there shows up. Like when I was doing thymus gland trituration, the 13 grandmothers showed up. I just was completely surrounded by them. I could just feel them. And I could feel another level of sort of male figures outside of them. And one of the grandmothers said to me, "Oh, they hold the space for us, right? And we're going to hold the space for you." And that was powerful. It was really profound for me. Never had that experience before so vividly. Couldn't see them, but I could hear them. I could feel them. Sometimes I'll call Archangel Michael. But I always try to stay very aware when I'm doing a trituration or if I'm doing a proving of sensing if something's coming in from the outside that doesn't belong, right? It happened to us when we were doing the IH remedies. There was a point at which a sort of dark energy came in, like a shadow energy came in that was not part of it, but was attracted to what we were creating. And so we had to do a series of things to get it out, to remove it. But it's about awareness. I think a lot of it's about awareness and consciousness and trust. I call on the people that are connected to me. I think each person who does it needs to call on their team, whoever that may be. And that may sound woo-woo and nuts to some people, but we all have a team of people.
Okay. Those people don't listen to this podcast. So the people who listen to this is all about woo-woo. So it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's whatever your relationship is.
Yeah.
Some people have guardian angels. Some people have other beings. There's all sorts of different beings that are there for different people. So it's like call in whoever your guys are and say, "Hey, I'm going to do this thing. Yeah. Whoever's meant to support this and protect it, please be present."
Actually, I lie. There's one person who doesn't like woo-woo because in my Homeopathy Hangout podcast Facebook group, where we try to have conversations about what's happened in the podcast, I did ask what stuff do people want to see on the podcast in 2026, and somebody said less woo-woo stuff. So I'm like, I didn't make the podcast for you, so
oops.
And then I thought I did ask for suggestions, so then I should be able to take that. No,
I think actually there's one thing we didn't talk about before, and I think is connected to that for me, which is that I think there's this idea that if you're into Fibonacci potencies or inspiring homeopathy or all this other stuff, that it's woo-woo and you're not really grounded in homeopathy, or you're not a homeopath, or you're not a classical homeopath. And for me, all those things are linked. So it is my sense and belief, and that's mine, right? I own it that it's mine. Classical homeopathy, Hahnemann's homeopathy, is at the base of everything, right? That is the organization system. That is the grounded base that everything else comes off of, right? And so in order for this other stuff to be grounded, to make sense, to be linked in with homeopathy itself and the essence of homeopathy, it has to have that base, right? My students will say to me, "Oh, Kim, you're just intuiting that remedy." I'm like, yeah, it's intuition then. Where does intuition come from? Do you think I could intuit that remedy if I'd never heard of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think I could find it if I didn't know anything about it? Do you think, and I said to them, like, look, I decided, because I'm a person who learns by doing, right? I'm more sound and feeling sort of person. I set out from early on, when I started becoming homeopath and learning it, to experience the remedies. Hahnemann says you have to know your medicines, and he doesn't mean know it in your head, right? He means you need to know your medicines. So I would take remedies. I would take it and do little provings with myself. For me, I always did that if I was alone. I always did that sitting at the base of a tree. Because trees are really grounding. So it's a good way to keep you grounded while you're doing something like that. As I progressed and I started using singing bowls, because music is very strong in my realm, I always thought I was going to be a music therapist. So it's like my way of getting that into homeopathy. But I would do it later with singing bowl. I'd sit with my singing bowl and I'd put the remedy in with a bit of water and I'd play the bowl for a bit until I started experiencing the remedy, and I'd get to know it and I'd meet it and I'd greet it. I've done that with hundreds, if not thousands of remedies. And anybody can do that. Anybody can do that to get to know them, right? And that's how you get to know the remedies that are the remedies that want to work with you, like you with your fringed violet. That substance wanted to work with you. It'll let you know if it wants to work with a patient too, right? But you needed to get to know it for some reason that may not be about right now. It may be about the future. Yeah. So it's just trusting that. As homeopaths, I just want to see us listen to our own instincts, our own center, our own core.
Kim, this has just been like so utterly, gorgeously, incredibly fulfilling on so many levels. My cup is overflowing with love and gratitude for you. It's been worth I don't know how long I've waited for this episode, over a year.
Sorry about that.
It's been so worth the wait in every single aspect. And I have got a bajillion more questions for you, but I just saw some messages from my parents-in-law who are just at our house at the moment making dinner for me. So really awesome parents-in-law. And I'm like, oh, I should probably go home.
Yeah, that's okay. We can do it another time.
Is there any final message that you want to leave our listeners with? I know you were saying you don't even have a website or socials or anything, and you're not selling anything. We're just having a conversation. How can people get hold of you if they want to learn from you? Or you teach at the Irish school, hey? So maybe people can go hunt you down there.
Yeah, I teach at the Irish school. They can always email me. It's just kimkalina55@gmail.com. Yeah, it's easy. They can always just email me. It's a simple one. And particularly if anybody's interested in being part of that kind of global trituration holding space, if you want to do it for pure love, definitely reach out. kimkalina55@gmail.com, which you can stick on the podcast too. Is fine.
Great.
But yeah, I would just say I'm so grateful to you because you have created a space where lots of different people can share their thoughts, their ideas, their hearts, and their minds. And that has elevated our profession. It has expanded it and allowed us to connect with each other in an authentic way, right? In a really authentic way. So thank you for being who you are and being so open-hearted and being so authentic and giving us this gift.
That is the hugest compliment ever. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You have completely made my entire day, week, month, and year. So thank you so much with all my heart. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Bye.